Welcome to Shedding the Shame. I'm your host, Tammy Wong. This is where women stop whispering about the hard things. No performing, no fixing, no pretending we're fine. Just honest conversations about what we've carried, what it cost us, and how we rebuilt. You don't need a perfect story. You just need the courage to tell the truth. You are not broken. You are not dramatic, and you are not alone. Let's shed the shame. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Shedding the Shame. Today, I'm here with Alexandra Perel-Winkler. Alexandra is an internal medicine and rheumatology trained physician, multidimensional healer, intuitive guide, and heart-centered coach. She specializes in helping people connect to their most essential part of themselves and create lives that feel meaningful and vibrant. Her clients are commonly high-achieving, intelligent women who find themselves feeling lackluster or dull in their lives that might appear perfect on the outside. But something inside craves more connection and clarity. She supports people in centering themselves amidst the overwhelm of modern life, bringing the worlds of science and spirit with a focus on soul connection. With a gift for making complex topics accessible and demystifying abstract spiritual principles, Alexandra's work is grounded in deep compassion and a belief in the human capacity to heal, transform, and thrive. Welcome to the podcast, Alexandra. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited for this convo.
Me too. I was really excited when you reached out and filled out the intake form because I had been following you on Instagram for a while before that, but we didn't know each other and we still haven't met in person. So hopefully soon, because we both live in Vancouver. I just think what we're going to talk about today is just going to be really interesting and compelling and outside the box for some people to think about and look at. And I love that. So let's get started.
Yeah.
So you were trained as a physician, which is obviously a very structured, evidence-based path. What originally drew you to medicine?
I was, from as long as I could remember, really drawn to working with people and wanting to be a healer. Really, that was more akin to what called me. And in my upbringing, in my surroundings, what that meant was medicine. I didn't have a lot of role models who were doing other types of healing. And when I reflect on it, also, my grandparents were refugees. My parents grew up with very little and they had to work really hard. And so I think they really pushed me, not in an aggressive way, but guided me is maybe a better word, to medicine. It was something that was secure and something that was known. And so that's really what got me there. It wasn't, looking back, the perfect fit, but it was more a gentle guidance. It was like, you can do this, so why would you do something weird when you could do something that people understand?
Right. Okay.
Even today, I saw my mom, and she had sent me a reel about women's health and hormones and peptides, and she was like, you should do this. I'm like, Mom,
We've moved on.
yeah.
We've moved on. But thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm really interested in it. And I think it's useful and helpful for people. And it's just not my way.
Totally. So at what point did you start feeling like something didn't quite fit?
I think that there was always that piece that didn't fit for me. I was always the odd one out in that path. I went into undergrad and I was an art student. I majored in the social studies of medicine, where I was studying the history and sociology and anthropology of Western medicine. And everyone else who was going into medicine was in science. So already I didn't belong in arts, I didn't belong in science, but I was doing my medical prerequisites, keeping doors open, and thinking that that was the path I was going to go on, but I wanted to do it my own way. And then that really intensified in medical school because, again, everyone was so into the medicine, and I was always feeling like something was missing. I'm like, what's the root cause? Okay, we're learning mechanisms of action, or we're learning the physiology of disease, but why? Why are people getting disease in the first place? I was always asking the questions that people weren't asking or there weren't really answers for. So I always felt a bit odd and a bit off. I also am quite a wild child. So going into medicine and being a party girl and someone who is artistic and creative, I wasn't I didn't feel like I was surrounded by my people. And again, it was within residency that just kept kind of intensifying as I kept going down the path of feeling like I wasn't quite in the right place for me.
Yeah. And we had a, call and talked about the podcast before recording today. And, you talked about feeling like the black sheep in your family and possibly in this scenario, with your classmates. And I can relate to that. I have felt like the black sheep as well in my family, and, continuing that with now what I'm doing and it being very outside the box and like people don't understand what I'm doing. So I get that. But like, what did that actually look and feel like in your day-to-day life? And what kind of shame did you carry around that?
That black sheep feeling started so young. I think I really have the soul of a mystic. And so I was always this deep thinker and feeler and seeker and was highly sensitive. And so I was always feeling like people didn't really get me. I was feeling subtle energy, things that we can't see, but that we can feel and sense, has always felt like the most real thing for me. And so having an attunement to that and recognizing that that wasn't something that other people were feeling in the same way or interested in the same way always made me feel like an outsider. So I think that there was an element of, because I was so sensitive, it not being named and not being so overt when I was a young child, but I always remember feeling like, oh, this is something I need to keep close. This is something that I can't really talk to people about. I think as a child, it almost turns into something that feels like, oh, there's maybe something wrong with me. Why am I different? Why do I not feel like I totally fit in? I was always looking for a best friend when I was young and feeling like I didn't have that person. I found those people, thankfully, on this journey of life in these almost 41 years now. But it took time to find my people. And something that was really monumental for me. And, I mentioned always feeling off also through my training and through education, because I was literally always the person who was doing things a little bit differently, studying nutrition and yoga on the side while I was in medical school, talking about the microbiome when no one was talking about that. And I think about a training that came up for me, I think it was 6 years ago, that was really pertinent and meaningful with one of my teachers. And she introduced me to the term the witch wound. And this is a term for people who are listening. The word witch carries so much controversy and so much energy with it. And generally speaking, when someone thinks of a witch, they think of malevolence, they think of evil, they think of scary. And I was so curious about this term. And so when I learned more about it, and I did some healing of the witch wound courses with this teacher that I was working with closely, and I learned that a witch in history is really someone who is the embodiment of divine feminine power, and who works with plants and who works with energy, and someone who's called to healing. And generally speaking, in history, witches have had the best intentions for humanity and work with deep kindness and deep compassion, but they may live at the edge of the village because they're sensitive and they're working with energies, and they're needing to be, connected to the plants and the animals around them. And so really recognizing that that witch wound was in me, and that I needed to make peace with that, and recognize and honor that part of me, and heal my own relationship to the term so that I could be more comfortable with who I am, was really helpful.
I love that. And you talking about what you were researching that made you different. I think that made you show how much you really cared about the person as a whole that you would be treating, looking at the microbiome and yoga and meditation and all these things. those things are very important, and science and research has shown that those things are very important to a person's overall well-being.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
and
and I think that because of my sensitivity and my intuitive psychic gifts, when I look back, I'm like, oh, I'm kind of cutting edge, and
mhm.
that's part of this feeling of being different and being the black sheep, is that even now, the work that I do now, working with spirit and soul and the energy body, people don't get it. It's something that I'm working really hard to put out there and educate people on, but it's still not totally accepted in the collective milieu. And we say, we are mind, body, spirit. Lots of people be like, oh yes, I want a holistic doctor, but ultimately people generally want supplements, they want lab tests, they want quick fixes. And we'll talk about how the energy work actually can be super fast, but it's also this work that I do. It's needing to go inward and needing to meet parts of yourself. And so I think that I've always been sort of on that cutting edge, but I'm coming to more comfort with the fact that I'm always going to be a little bit on the outside because of that too.
And I think that's okay, because you're opening people's minds, and the people that are willing will see the magic in it. And I think for a lot of people, it has nothing to do with you. I think it's their own thing of judging themselves for, oh, that might make me weird if I get into this, or questioning how they were raised and made to think there was only one way to treat things. We've all been kind of raised in that way in Western society. So there's a lot of integration in different modalities in Eastern medicine and meditation and all these things that I think I've explored over the past 5-10 years. And I've really benefited from opening myself up to different ways of thinking. So I listened to you on another podcast. And so from that podcast, I know that you were actually studying to be a lupus researcher, and you were really close to finishing that work and going into that field. And I related to that because my last job before leaving biotech was actually for a company that had a lupus medication for lupus nephritis.
Crazy.
Yeah. So when I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, crazy. And then got laid off and just like went through my own discovery and ended up starting to do this, not this podcast specifically, but my work in the hair loss space and advocating. So just, I thought that was a cool thing we had in common. So that I didn't know before.
I love these coincidences. It's so meant to be.
For those that are listening, lupus does affect majority women and majority minority women. And it's a really difficult disease, and it's a disease that takes years to be diagnosed. So I know the work that goes into becoming a physician in that. So I can imagine the intensity of your studies. So, but I know there was a big wake up call for you during that time, and things really shifted for you. So can you talk a little bit about what happened?
Yes, absolutely. So recently I was reflecting on this because I just had an event, and I do a talk at the beginning of the event. And I usually talk about during my time when I was training to be a rheumatologist and I was on the path to be a lupus researcher, and when my father got sick. And I will get to that. But I actually realized that I think that my wake up call started a little bit earlier in my internal medicine residency. It wasn't as clear. My father's diagnosis was like a lightning bolt. But I think what predated that was this experience I had one afternoon where I was already in my third year of my residency, meaning I was a senior resident, overseeing 2 junior doctors. I had 1 senior graduated doctor supporting me. And there was this one afternoon where, as a resident, we're working 80-hour weeks, we're working 12-hour days on short days, 16-hour days on longer days, really, really grueling training. And we carry 20 patients when we're a senior physician, as well as overseeing the 2 junior doctors. And I had one patient on my list who was quite unstable. He was very sick. He was very complicated. He had a lot of comorbidities. And he also had a very lovely, but high needs family. They were very demanding in terms of the communication that they needed. They were very concerned. And for anyone listening, it's great to advocate. And that's how your family gets the best care. So I totally
Absolutely.
understood. But then as the physician dealing with it, it takes a ton of your energy and your time. And it's very challenging. And so this patient had been on my list for a few days, and it was a huge drain, of my energy, my time. And my senior doctor paged me and he told me that he had just seen the patient. He was unstable. He had the ICU come in and observe him, and they were going to take him, and he was going to be transferred to the intensive care. And obviously, if someone needs to be transferred to intensive care, this is not a good thing. This is not the direction we want people to be going in. But in that moment, being completely transparent, because this is shedding the shame, I felt not even relief. I was feeling gleeful. Joy was a feeling that was in my body hearing this news, because the first thing I did was extravagantly cross this man off my list, make new check boxes, call ICU and sign the patient out. And I'm like, maybe I'm going to get home before 9 o'clock today. I'm so excited. And that's what happened. I signed him out. I went on with my day. I finished up with the rest of the patients. I got home around 9 o'clock that night. And as I was walking home, something just hit. And I realized this was not the first time that I had dehumanized a patient. This was not the first time someone on my list was just a to-do list for me. But it hit me that had been happening. And it just was this realization that I am not being lit up by this work. I am not excited to be here for 12 hours a day. I'm not excited about what I'm learning right now. This doesn't feel like the right fit. What feels like the right fit for me is to be the person who would take that extra effort to call that family and touch base with them, even though it's not the thing that I need to have on my checklist. And so it was that time already at the beginning of my senior year of my residency where I did start engaging in practices like dabbling in, meditation and exploring other things that were starting to bring me back to myself, because I was feeling so exhausted and overwhelmed by the work that I wasn't able to, think about myself. I was just going into a burnout phase, and all of a sudden that sort of started bringing me back. And so I think I was already reconnecting with myself, and I had my first year, the next year of my rheumatology fellowship. And then in the beginning of my last year of my rheumatology fellowship was when my father got ill. And that was the lightning bolt moment. It was really one of those awakening moments that I think a lot of people can realize that come from grief, from shock, from those dark nights of the soul where everything is just so clear in a moment, where I learned that my dad had a devastating diagnosis of stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and the chances of his survival was about 1%. And I just saw things so clearly. I do not want to be a lupus researcher. I want to be able to help heal my father in my own way that feels right for me, that feels like it comes from my essence and from my energy. And I'm a very woo-woo person. I relate to having past lives or our souls kind of going through multiple transitions on this earth. And I really believe that my soul has been doing healing work for a really long time. And so I think I really felt that so clearly, that I think a part of me, that little girl who always wanted to be a healer, was waiting for an initiation, was waiting for someone to tell her how to do the thing that she's felt was in her. And in that moment with my father's diagnosis, I can't wait any longer. I need to take steps to start doing what feels right for me.
Yeah. My brother-in-law is a physician. He's a surgical oncologist. And so he obviously went through residency fellowship. And just even now, just the hours that they work and the surgeries and multiple hours. And if that doesn't feel like it lights your soul up and that's your huge calling, then that's incredibly difficult to do every day. It's incredibly difficult to do anyway, but like impossible to sustain a career doing that if it's not in you. So I'm glad that you recognized it early and transitioned to something that does light you up and does make you feel like you. And how long did it take you to work through the shadows of that and the truths you had to face about yourself? How did you move forward there?
I don't think that work is ever done.
Yeah, true.
If you are interested in doing this work or that work that you describe of really connecting to the essence of who you are and living a life expressing that, I think we're always refining it. And that really has become my jam. That's the thing that lights me up and excites me the most.
Yeah.
The process of getting to where I was then to now, it's been almost 10 years.
Yeah.
And in true doctor medical fashion, I was like, okay, I'm going to take, a couple months off when I graduate and I'm going to figure this out. I'll take a course and then it will be done. And instead, it was years where I was really uncovering and doing my own healing work and exploring my inner terrain and really doing the work on myself first before I even had an inkling. I always knew that I wanted to do something with people, and that was always my prayer and my ask was like, show me, what is the thing that I feel is in me? And I now see how I really needed to do the work on myself. The healer has to heal themselves before they can heal others. And so I really needed to do the work and understand my own inner landscape before I could work with other people. And it was a process of midwifing this thing over years and years and years until really only in the past 2 years have I been able to say, okay, I have a way where people can come in and I know how to flow through a session. I know how to hold a container for people. And I'm always learning and I'm always growing and I'm always filling my toolkit. But I feel now that I have a very strong foundation, but it took a really long time to do the inner work first before I could do that.
And were there specific shadows that you really had to work through?
I feel like there's so many that I could name. One that comes up that has been a big one for me in the past few years actually has been perfectionism. And this one was really tricky for me because being that black sheep, part of that throughout medical school was I'm not a type A person. I'm very type B, maybe type B for a person who went through medical school. So I didn't relate to when people talked about perfectionism because it's not the way that I work with my work. I'm not that organized. My mind is like a web. I definitely have neurodivergent tendencies. So I never thought of myself as a perfectionist. But something huge for me in the past few years was recognizing my perfectionism in how I show up and how I want people to perceive me. And I realized that I was wanting everyone to like me. I was wanting to be palatable. Maybe that's part of that black sheep wound. I don't want people to know that inside I'm different. I don't want to have too strong an opinion. I want everyone to like me.
Well, we crave acceptance
Totally.
and being seen for who we are, right?
Totally.
Because I'll speak for myself, I won't speak for you, but growing up in a family dynamic that I did, I never felt unconditionally loved for who I was at my core. So I think there's a part of me that's always seeking that from people I meet. And whether I realize it or not, it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was so huge. And I think it really came up for me because I was starting to put myself out there and I was starting to create content and I was trying to really clarify who am I in this space and how do I want to show up and what do I believe in. And I was meeting these edges where I was like, ooh, do I feel comfortable talking about this? What if people don't like it? I was trying to fit myself into a box where I could be super palatable, and realizing that to be a leader and to be someone who is showing up and teaching things, people are not all going to like what you're saying. You're not going to land for everyone. You're not going to be the thing for everyone. And realizing that was really big for me in the past few years.
Yeah. Definitely relate. I think starting this podcast was a step out for me of not being palatable and being like, fuck it.
Yeah.
I've got stuff to say. I know a lot of women have stuff to say, and I'm tired of tiptoeing around and not talking about hard stuff that has been really devastating in my life in some ways. And so let's do it. It's time.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
40s are the time for that,
I
man.
was just thinking that. That's kind of why I wanted to name it, because I feel like it's in the collective. So many women are just ready to put it away. It's time for it to go. We need to see it. We need to love it and understand where it came from and be like, okay, you're not running me anymore.
I just turned 45 on Monday, and my motto of the year is give less fucks and have more fun.
Woo!
So I am all for it. I'm here for it.
I'll send you the dance party link to something I'm going to enjoy.
Because that was on my list of have more impromptu dance parties with my kids specifically.
Oh, I love that.
Because my youngest loves dancing around and music, and they're not going to be young forever. They're not going to want to do that with me forever. So
How
do it
old are
now.
they?
6 and 9.
Well, amazing. Something I do with my girls when I drop them off is before we go into school, we put on one song and we have like a little dance party in the car.
Oh, I love that.
Really
I'm stealing that.
Yeah.
My 9-year-old might think it's cringe. She's getting to that stage where things are cringe, but my 6-year-old will be down.
Yeah.
And my dog
And
will
I feel
bark
like
at
that's
us.
even more reason to be so fully expressed in front of my kids. And
Yeah.
my 8-year-old also sometimes is like, oh, mom, you know what? When in 10 years from now or in 15 years from now, I want you to remember how I didn't care what other people.
I think it's so important for our daughters, especially, to see us being ourselves and not ashamed of it, and sharing that with the world and seeing the impact that it has. It matters. It's helping people. And I want them to learn that, yeah, I may not be for everybody, but the people that need me will find me, and I am helping people. And that's all that matters. It doesn't have to be everybody who likes me.
Exactly. And the energetics of it is that the more we can be in our own frequency and our own essence and really true to that, and not having these pieces like the perfectionism becoming a shadow around that, it magnetizes the right people to you.
Totally. You now describe yourself as a medicine woman. What does that term actually mean to you? And then how do people in your life respond to that when you started calling yourself that, when you stepped into that version of yourself?
So in my space, it's really hard to find a term because it's so multidimensional and I incorporate so many tools. So sometimes someone might come in and see me and a lot of it will be a conversation. And I know that energy is moving and I know that there's, intuitive guidance coming in, but also sometimes it's coaching. A lot of it is just a conversation that needs to be had. And then sometimes I'm working with people and I'm working at the level of the nervous system and just getting them to feel more regulated and grounded and calm before we can go and do the deeper work. And then sometimes it's wild and almost psychedelic, so it's such a broad range of things. And for me, the term healer didn't fit because that sounds like someone who's healing you. And I really believe that my work is more holding space for people to do that inner movement and transformation from within. And so I like the term medicine woman because for me, it brings up this image of a woman with a big bag of tools. And there's definitely a witchy edge to it. I definitely feel like, there's a lot of witch in me, but I feel like there's also priestess energy and there's also oracle energy and there's also, divine mother energy. And so I felt like that term encapsulated a lot and just held a lot of that. And I also like that I went from medical doctor to medicine woman. It just felt right. And so the second part being, how did people take it? I think that I have some people really close to me, including my partner, who is the best friend, and two of my best friends who I have on a WhatsApp group that we call the Soul Sisters,
Oh, I love that.
or Spirit Sisters. And they really are that for me. And they get a lot of my processing and they get a lot of the backstory of when I'm really working through stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that when I present it, I've already really worked through it. And so it's been quite natural because when we work through things on our own, then number one, we don't give a shit. You don't even take it in. You're like, I don't know what your opinion is, but I'm not even caring.
Yeah.
And I think also on an energetic level, we can often see a switch. So for my parents, for example, who probably still don't understand exactly what I do, there was never any significant pushback because I was so grounded and I wasn't like, oh, I don't know, I might be doing this. They didn't see the back and forth. They didn't see the sort of the struggle and the work. It was just sort of presented when it was ready.
Yeah.
And so because of that, it was quite a graceful transition.
I'm good. I'm glad. And I think when you're confident in the direction that you're moving, other people sense that and they're like, okay, let's follow along.
Yeah.
So you just talked a little bit about how your sessions can obviously vary quite widely from coaching to, a psychedelic experience. So can you walk us through, I don't want to say a typical session because I don't think that exists for you, but let's say, you do actually get to a point where you go really deep with somebody. Can you walk us through what that looks like?
I do have a framework. And generally speaking, when people come see me, we'll sit down and we'll have a conversation. So I ask people to come with some sort of intention or question, which definitely can bring up a lot of questions. Basically, an intention is a question or the why. What is bringing people to the session? What is calling them? And that can be as abstract or vague as people want it to be. Some people will come to me with a very direct question. You mentioned the podcast I was recently on. Andrea was very open about asking, she is on an SSRI and she's wondering if, it's time for her to tinker with the dose or think about going off of it. And that was something that she was curious about. That just happened to be a medical question. People do not have to come to me with medical questions. And sometimes it's just a feeling. Someone recently reached out to me and was saying, I have a lot of women who are leveling up in their careers or really wanting to feel more comfortable with their own growth. But we have these parts of us that are keeping us small. We're feeling uncomfortable in our bodies. We have imposter syndrome. Our inner critic is loud. So you might just feel uncomfortable, and there might be something around that in your life. It might be your relationship. I work with some women who are on fertility journeys. So it can be anything that's going on in your life. Also, in my own work with myself, I'm going into a deep dive ceremony in 2 weeks around my birthday. And I love that we're both Tauruses, by the way.
Yeah. People get us wrong. They're like, oh, you're stubborn. No, I'm actually not a stubborn person unless it's something that's very important personally to me or someone I love. And then I'm incredibly loyal and mama bear. I think that people focus on the negative attributes versus that being a positive thing. I don't know about you. That's how I've experienced
totally.
it.
Don't get us wrong.
No, we're great. We're the best friends ever. Okay.
Yes,
we have your back always.
That is for sure.
Yeah.
And so fun. We love to eat and dance and enjoy life.
Yes. Exactly.
Yes, intention. I'm going into my own ceremony and I really look at like, what is life speaking to me? What's coming up? What's triggering me? What am I feeling challenged by right now? What are the edges of my own self that I'm bumping up against? And also, what are the synchronicities? What's popping up in the ethers that is kind of showing me that it should be looked at? So people can come with a question, intention, that helps create an anchor for the work. And then we chat and I ask questions, and sometimes I will channel and get intuitive guidance, and I might mention some coachy type things that are coming through in the conversation, or it might just be me gathering information. And I'm gathering information until I feel like I really understand and I have this sense and feeling in my body. Because often people will say, this is my question or this is my intention, but there's a thread beneath it that I really want to get to and feel into. And once I feel that, then I have a sense of where we're going. And then we start what I call the ceremony. And for the ceremony, I'll have someone lie down. So this can be done virtually or in person. If you're virtual, then you just have to be in a quiet room and you can lie down. You don't need to see me, but we just need to be able to hear each other. Mm-hmm. And otherwise, I have a beautiful room. I work out of Clementine Clinic on Granville and 16th. And so people will come and see me there. And I play music, and I start by just getting people into their bodies. I get them grounded. I start using breathwork techniques and other things to regulate the nervous system. And once we do that, we start a journey. So on the outside, it might look like a guided meditation, which is part of what it is. But really, it's almost like a shamanic journey where I'm guiding you in, and the foundation of my work is to connect people to their soul essence. So I get people to have a bodily awareness and feeling of that connection to their soul. And once we have that connection, that might be what happens in the first session. That might be enough. That might be where we go. If that connection happens quickly, then we can go deeper and we start asking the body and the system, what are the things that are blocking the fertility journey? Or what is the story behind the inner critic? Why are they so active? Why are they feeling like they need to protect the system? So I do use a lot of parts work as well. Some people might be familiar with internal family systems. I'm not an internal family systems practitioner. I actually came to the work more in a shamanic way with my other teachers. And so I'll weave that in, and we'll start meeting these parts of self that are protecting the greater being from being more connected to, and plugged into that soul essence. And so we work with those parts. And as this is all happening, we're in an energetic container where also energy is moving and shifting. And then once the ceremony and the energy I feel is complete for the session, I'll bring people back to their bodies and make sure they feel really grounded and really comfortable in the session. And I'll bring them out and we'll have a chat afterwards, just a little processing about what they experienced, some of their takeaways. And then I usually have homework, because the work in the ceremony is the insight work, where we get to really see what is in our systems and how things might be running. Mm-hmm. But then the hardest part is coming back into your life and integrating that awareness. Then it's the mindfulness and the awareness and the neuroplasticity that has to happen, where people need to go home and they need to practice that connection with their soul. They need to reconnect. And I recommend it as an everyday little 1 to 2 minute practice of reconnection, and become aware of, if I have this loud inner critic, being aware of when that is coming in and not letting that totally take over their system, but instead understand, oh, this is why my inner critic is acting in this way. This is their story, what triggers them. And so I can now work with that part of myself in real time, as opposed to just letting it take over me.
As you're talking, I'm like thinking through things. I don't remember if I shared with you on our previous chat, but I'm a trained breathwork facilitator now. You did. And so I obviously have done my own practice, but I haven't been doing it much the last few weeks because life has been crazy. And the self-care stuff is the first thing that falls to the wayside. But I can feel it. I can feel my body is so tense, and I really need to do even 5 minutes makes such a difference. So I myself have seen how helpful that is at regulating my nervous system, feeling calm in my body, being more patient with my kids, all those things when I practice that regularly. And then I'm also in therapy doing EMDR right now. And so when you were talking about the, parts work and the inner child, that came up in my last session where it was communicating to my 5-year-old, 11-year-old self that I'm safe now and I don't need them to protect me anymore. I think a lot of people, well, I hope not a lot of people listening are like, ooh, woo woo, but it is really powerful. I was very resistant to that work at first. I wasn't feeling it. And I have really immersed myself in it now, and it does make a difference. So I'm excited to do a session with you because just I'm
Yes,
very into all this stuff that you're talking about now, and
I
because I've
love it.
seen it do wonders for my own healing.
I really love it because we don't fully understand how it works. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's because we don't fully understand. Yes, we can say, okay, I'm mind, body, soul, but we still sort of silo those things as
Mm-hmm.
separate. But the reality is they're all interwoven and interconnected. So I
Yeah.
feel like my sessions really meet you at all levels, where you're working at the full spectrum of who you are. So there's that mental aspect of we're journeying and we're using imagination and we're talking back and forth about what's coming up and we're connecting to where is it in the body, but also it's maybe an inner child part. And then when we're connecting with that part and having a conversation with it, the energy is moving. And that part of it really seals it and just eases things a lot. And that is the part that we just don't have the science for, and we can't fully explain to people yet. And I think that's why people feel that resistance. But as I said, I think that's people like you and I who are getting it and who are doing it are at the cutting edge. And also, I think that the proof is sometimes just in the pudding. I am living a life that feels so joyful and calm and clear and confident and fun, and that's what I want for people.
Absolutely. We all deserve that. So, what kind of transformations have you seen in your clients?
There's so many specifics, but I think that what comes through immediately for me in an answer is clarity. So a lot of people, especially in this day of information overwhelm, and everyone's an expert and everyone has every piece of information available at their fingertips, it can be so overwhelming. And then we're trying to navigate, what should I do about my relationship or my fertility journey or my medical challenges or whatever it is. And we're not taught and trained to connect to our intuition, connect to our bodily inner knowing. And so our mind ends up spiraling because, I like to say, like, life is not a math equation. Like, I think we've all had the experience where you can write down the pros and cons of something and then you just want to do it again because you get to the end of it and you're like, well, am I supposed to just tally it up? But this one weighs more than this one, but does it? And there's so many circumstances. And ultimately, I find it fascinating how even in one or two sessions, I will have people come in and they will feel so overwhelmed. And then when we actually get them into connection to their soul and their inner knowing, it's just clear to them what the answer is. And so that is a big piece of just reconnecting people to that part of themselves, that inner knowing and that intuition is a big part of it. And even after a few sessions, having just these huge transformations and people being so much more clear on what felt so murky and so uncertain before, that's a big piece. And also some of the things that we've been talking about and have been naming, a lot of these wounds, something that comes up so often that people may not even realize is, I think that we all have a core wound around not being worthy.
Mm-hmm.
And that might not even be in our consciousness, but it's so deep in there. And so much of the time that's what's uncovered is these parts are very active because they're holding this shame and this fear of someone finding out I'm not worthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we get to that place where we connect again to the soul and we feel this essence of who we are as what I believe is an extension of, the divine creative life force that is a part of this whole multiverse that we're a part of, when we realize we're just a part of all of that and we have that connection, it becomes so clear that we are as worthy as everyone else. I like to say worthiness doesn't make us special. You know, everyone's worthy.
Yeah.
But we have that wound. So that's a big one, is uncovering that and healing around that. And a lot of women in the seesaw of being too much and not enough at the same time. That's really common too.
Mm-hmm.
So those are a lot of the things that I'm working with people.
And that kind of answered my next question, which was around women's wounds, because you've talked about that. So the worthiness, and I think that's just very valid for everyone. We all have some circumstance in our life that has made us feel not good enough. And it can be really damaging, especially if it's something that happens to repeat itself a few times in your life. And that really gets into your core of like, nope, this is who I am, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really important to work through as a woman, especially.
It almost feels to me, and maybe this is my medical doctor brain too, but I think about how we also just go through natural neural developmental stages and I see this in my kids. And as I mentioned, my oldest is 8 now, and I'm seeing that he's really learning about social structure. And that's just a part of his brain that is all of a sudden starting to understand groups and belonging. And it's not just about him anymore. It's about the group. And so I think that some of these wounds also almost develop naturally as we progress through development.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's our soul's journey to sort of, we have to do that to kind of become adult humans, safe and appropriate in the tribal world that we live in, the community that we live in. And then the next stage is, okay, then can we actualize? Can we come back to that understanding that yes, we need to be respectful and we need to do certain things like wear clothes in public and, those sorts of things, but that we actually don't need to belong everywhere, and that we can actually feel worthy being true to who we are. It almost feels like an arc of healing that we need to progress through.
Well, if you don't want to wear clothes in public, you can go to Wreck Beach.
Yes, exactly. There's spaces.
There are spaces for that, where you can feel as free as you want.
Yeah.
In San Francisco, where I used to live, the opposite side of, what was it? Baker Beach, the backside.
Yeah, and I love that. It's like they're good to have spaces, and also like I don't want a naked man on the bus.
No, not with my child there. No, I'm good.
Another one that I see, interestingly, coming up a lot for me and in clients and just in the collective right now, there's a really interesting energy around judgment and comparison in women. Mm-hmm. I think it's really interesting that for me to observe, because I like observing things on a broader scale of, the energetics of the collective. And it's coming up in individuals, it's coming up in myself, it's coming up in a bigger way. And I think it's coming up to be cleared. And I'm really excited about it, actually, because I think that women are really wanting to be more collaborative. And at the same time, when we think back to our history, we were not able to have credit cards until the 1970s, right? Or owning property, having our own bank accounts. And so
don't even start talking about medical research.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. We could have a whole podcast on that topic, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that there was a survival mechanism to women being in competition for one another, because they needed the man, they needed the security, they needed to have that other person take care of them and to be chosen. The interesting energy about judgment is that when we are judging outwardly, we're also judging inwardly. And so some people are coming to me and saying, it's my inner critic and I'm constantly judging myself. But then they're also talking about this comparison. It's not just like this internal thing, but there's this comparison to the other. And so either the other is being pedestalized, or you're the woman who's looking at someone and saying, oh, that outfit doesn't look great, or whatever it is, and you're judging outwardly. And I think the more that we're healing the relationship to ourselves that we have from within, we're also having just a naturally more positive acceptance of the way that other women are showing up in the world. I feel like a lot of people are feeling it right now, and I'm excited about it.
Me too. And I feel like in Vancouver, I've been really pleasantly surprised because I'm not from here. We moved here about 6.5 years ago from the Bay Area. And I feel such a difference here where women, especially female entrepreneurs, small business owners, really support each other here and try to uplift each other. Maybe I'm just in a good group for that. But I feel like people go out of their way to mention me to other people or to just like hype me up and make me feel like I'm doing good things. And it's really great when, especially when you're someone who's new in their business career and feeling like people actually believe in them and are supporting them and are there to uplift each other. And I do absolutely believe that if someone is criticizing you or talking about you behind your back, they are really projecting things they feel about themselves. It's not ever really about you unless you've actually done something to somebody that's been bothersome, but it's usually about them and something they haven't healed inside themselves. And I saw somebody, the Whole30 founder, Melissa Lau, I think is her last name. She posted on Instagram the other day, if somebody is coming into your comments and putting you down, it's never the happy, successful people who are doing that.
Yeah.
Never is. Because no one's going to waste their time, come to your page and put you down when they're actually happy in themselves and a good person.
Honestly, it shocks me that people have the time and energy to do that.
Right? But getting back to you. So what would you say to younger you who felt closeted and out of place now?
Oh, that's so good. What would I say to her? I need to channel that one. Oh, I would just want to show up when she was alone doing little moon rituals in the backyard. I want to show up and be that. I should do this ceremony actually.
You should.
Because I was talking about how I was waiting for someone to come. I should probably go back and meet her and come and show up. I think that's how I would want to come. I would want to show up and let her know that she has the medicine that this world needs inside of her, and that everyone is needed, and that she needs to connect within and trust herself, and that it will all work out.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
If someone listening right now feels different or like they don't belong, what would you want them to hear?
It's the same message. Your unique essence, your unique spark is what this world needs. It's not random, and it's absolutely perfect. And every single person has their own unique signature, and that is what makes you beautiful and unique and special. And that's going to be really important to certain people out there. So the more you can connect to that and understand what that is and trust it and cultivate it, the happier you're going to be and the more positive impact you will make.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I feel there's an element also with that of what you seek is seeking you. If you have a dream, if you have a desire, I believe that there is this flow of benevolence and love in the universe that wants that for you too. Mm-hmm. So trust it and go for it.
And put it out into the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So what does living in alignment with your soul feel like now?
What does it feel like? I've mentioned some words before. There's a groundedness. I think something that's been surprising to me, my work is very intuitively guided, sort of do the work and I follow my own breadcrumbs, and I do feel like I am guided and I'm following something. And so it's always unfolding. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I'm surprised by what I learn. And something that has surprised me is that when we live more in alignment with our essence and with what I'm calling the soul. And I've used lots of different terms. So whoever's listening, pick the one that aligns for you the most, your essence, your frequency, whatever it is, your signature. When you connect to that part of yourself and you start living from that place more so that it becomes your baseline or your foundation and not the foreign thing, but the more common thing, I think it supports your nervous system. Because I think that we are living in a world where we're so logical and analytic, and we're really leaning on that fight flight mechanism.
Yeah.
And we're so upregulated so much of the time, especially if you're living in a city. Even if your life is relaxed, there's so much noise, there's so many people, there's all this Wi-Fi and stuff that we don't even realize is affecting our systems. And so when we attune more and live more in that soul-centered place, there's a bit of an exhale. There's this groundedness. There's this calm. Your nervous system doesn't need to carry as much. You can kind of offload it. And this soul aspect of us is plugged in to that life force energy that I was talking about. And so it doesn't have capacity in the same way that our nervous system does. It's infinite. So you can kind of dump some of it onto there and it can hold it for you. And so I feel a lot more calm. I feel a lot more regulated because of that. I'm more clear. I'm more attuned to my intuition. I'm more connected to both myself and my inner messages from my body and from my inner wisdom, but also connected to the external world and that collective messaging that comes in. That's what alignment feels like for me. And it feels like a lot more capacity and confidence to live from my true expression.
And what a way to show up for your family and your friends too, being your whole self. So last question, what does shedding the shame mean to you?
I feel like probably a lot of people have learned about shame from Brene Brown. I think what I love about your podcast title is that it's so perfect because we're having conversation. And I think that with shame, we really need to bring those things that we're carrying and we're holding in the shadows and in the darkness within us into the light, and to really not only for ourselves, but share it and be able to talk about it. And once once it comes out of your mouth, the other person receives it, and then you realize, oh, I don't need to be so shameful. That is really what came up for me when I heard your title and when I learned about what you were doing. And I think these things that we're shameful of feel like the function of shame is to keep them hidden and to keep them quiet and to make them feel like they're secrets. But the reality is that most of us share a lot of these same themes. And so once we share them and we put them out there, we realize we're not alone, and we get to release, we get to shed it.
Yeah.
And so I'm really grateful for what you're doing.
Thank you. And I'm glad that the name resonated. It just felt right. I'm sure it's a quote from someone, so I'm not going to claim it's my quote, but I like to say that telling your story gives someone else permission to tell theirs. And it's so important when you are feeling confident in your own story to share it, because there is absolutely not one, but many women or people who share the same story or the same feelings, and making someone feel less alone is one of the most powerful things, I think.
Totally. Absolutely agree.
Well, thank you so much for being on. I really enjoyed this conversation, and
Me too.
I think people are going to love listening to it as well, and hope it opens some people's minds if they are a little close to this. And I will definitely be booking with you because I'm excited to see what your sessions are like.
Yes, people can check me out on Instagram at The Mystic Medicine. And my website is www.themysticmedicine.com if they want to look into events or more information about the sessions.
Amazing. And I will share all that in the show notes as well, so anybody can go grab the links there. Thanks again, and have a wonderful day.
You too.
Thank you for being here and for listening to another powerful conversation on shedding the shame. If something in today's episode resonated with you, I want you to sit with that. Let it land. Let it remind you that whatever you're carrying, you don't have to carry it quietly. Shame survives in silence. Healing begins when we speak. If this episode moved you, share it with a woman who needs to hear it. Start the conversation. Send the text. Have the brave talk. And if you're ready to stop whispering about your own story, keep coming back. These conversations are just getting started. Until next time, keep telling the truth, keep taking up space, and keep shedding the shame.